the twin moons hung low over the quiet alien village. Casting silver light on the edge of the jungle, Aro, an old human, lived alone in a small wooden house surrounded by thick trees and a large garden. He was not rich, but in his garden he grew something very rare worth mangoes. On this planet, mangoes were almost unknown and they sold for high credits in nearby markets. But Aro didn't sell many. He grew them for himself, for the memories. Each evening he would sit on his porch, peel a mango, and remember Earth. But for the last 3 nights, his mangoes had been disappearing. Not all of them, just a few. Carefully picked, with no sign of damage to the trees. At first, he thought maybe some animal was sneaking in. But animals didn't place the peels neatly beside the tree, and animals didn't wipe the juice from the fruit using leaves. No, this was something or someone intelligent. Aro was old, but not slow. That night, he didn't go to sleep. Instead, he sat near the window with the lights off. Holding his old plasma torch in his lap, hours passed. The jungle made soft noises, chirps, rustles, and distant calls. Then, just after midnight, he heard the garden gate creak open, slow. Careful steps moved across the grass. Aro's grip on the torch tightened. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he wanted answers. He peeked through the curtain and saw a small shadow crouching by his mango tree. The figure moved quickly, almost too fast for a child. It reached up, picked one mango, sniffed it like it was treasure. Then took a slow bite, juice dripped down. Its chin and a quiet, happy sound came from the shadow. Aro stepped out of the house, silent as a ghost. The figure froze, the mango still in its mouth. Aro saw now it was not a human, but a small alien girl. Her skin was a soft purple. Her clothes were torn, and her feet were bare and dirty. She looked up with big, green, glowing eyes. Her body trembling, ready to run, but Aro didn't yell. He didn't point the torch. Instead, he said gently, "Hungry," and held out another mango from his pocket. The girl looked confused, unsure. But the scent of the fruit made her take one small step forward. She didn't speak, but her eyes spoke loud fear. Hunger, hope. Slowly, she reached out and took the mango from Aro's hand. She didn't run, just sat down on the ground and ate, both hands shaking as she held the fruit. Aro sat down too. A few feet away, he watched her quietly, his mind full of questions. Who was she? Where did she come from? And why was she alone? The girl finished eating, then looked up at him again. She touched her chest and said, "Nilu." Her voice was soft, her accent strange, but clear enough. Aro nodded. "Nilu," he repeated, then pointed to himself. "Aro," she tried to smile, but it faded quickly as she looked around, like she expected someone to come take her away. Aro stood up and said, "Come inside." She hesitated, then followed slowly, staying close to the shadows. Inside, Aro gave her a blanket, a cup of water, and an old biscuit. She sat on the edge of the couch, eating slowly, carefully. Aro tried asking her more, but she didn't understand most of his words. Still, he could see it in her eyes. She was tired, scared, and very alone. That night, Nilu curled up on the couch, holding a mango close to her chest, like it was a toy. Aro watched her sleep and sighed. She had stolen from him, but he couldn't be angry. She was just a child lone in the jungle, stealing only what she needed to survive. And she hadn't run away when he found her. She had trusted him just enough to eat by his side. As the night grew quiet again, Aro stood by the window. He stared out into the jungle, wondering if someone was looking for her. Or worse, if she was running from something. He didn't know yet, but one thing was sure: his life was about to change. And it had started with one stolen mango. The morning sun broke through the jungle mist, golden light dancing across Aro's garden, but inside his house, all was quiet. Except for the soft breathing of the little alien girl. She was curled like a kitten under the old blanket. One hand still resting on an empty mango peel. AOL. Hadn't slept, he had watched over her all night. His mind full of questions. He had seen many strange things in his long life, but never something like this. Nilu didn't stir until the smell of fresh, boiling water reached her. Her eyes blinked open bright green and glowing like twin emeralds. She sat up fast, confused for a moment, unsure of where she was. Then she saw Aro, sitting across the room, holding out a small cup of warm tea. She didn't take it right away, just stared at him, her thin arms hugging her knees. Aro didn't move closer. He just placed the cup on the table and said softly, "Drink if you want." Minutes passed before Nilu moved, slowly crawling. Forward like a shy animal, she picked up the cup, sniffed it. Then took a small sip, her eyes widening in surprise. She finished it all in 3 long gulps. Then looked up at Aro with something new in her eyes. Trust. Still, she didn't talk much, just pointed at objects and gave small words. Mango, fire, sky, drink. And her name again, Nilu. She was trying, slowly, to speak in his language, but something deeper hid in her silence. Aro noticed it when she flinched at loud sounds, or when a shadow passed over the window. Fear lived inside her, old and sharp. Like a knife she always held tight. That afternoon, Aro gave her a soft towel and showed her the washroom when she came out. Her skin was a lighter purple now that the dirt was gone. Her hair, long and silvery blue, fell over her shoulders. In soft waves, she looked less like a thief and more like a child who had been lost too long. Aro cooked something simple: boiled rice and soft vegetables. She ate quickly, but neatly, watching every move he made like she expected it to change. Later that day she went outside to the garden, walking slowly through the grass with bare feet. She touched the mango trees gently, as if she was saying sorry for stealing from them. Then something strange happened. Nilu reached out to one of the trees and whispered a word. The trees. Leaves shifted ever so slightly, though there was no wind. Aro saw it, and he frowned. Was that a trick of light, or had the tree responded? But before he could ask, Nilu tensed, her ears twitching. Her eyes scanning the jungle, she dropped the mango she was holding and ran behind the garden shed. Hiding, Aro followed fast, heart pounding. What is it? He whispered, but she just shook her head, finger pressed to her lips. Moments later, a sound passed overhead, a faint hum, like an invisible machine. Aro looked up and spotted a small drone flying far above the trees, slow and silent, just one black eye scanning the jungle. When it passed, Nilu came out from hiding, her face pale. She said one word in a shaking voice. Hunters Aro didn't understand fully, but he knew fear when he saw it, and Nilu was terrified. Not of the jungle, not of him, but of whoever flew that drone. He walked over, kneeled down, and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe here," he said gently, but her eyes told him she didn't believe it. Not yet. That evening, Nilu refused to sleep on the couch. She crawled under the table instead and built a small nest with her blanket and some pillows. Aro let her be. He knew some wounds needed time before they could heal. He sat on his porch, polishing his old plasma rifle for the first time in years. Not because he wanted to fight, but because something told him soon he might have to. The mango thief was no longer just a mystery. She was a scared child with secrets carved deep in her bones. And someone out there was searching for her. But Aro had made a silent decision. If the hunters came, he wouldn't give her up. He would protect her, no matter the cost. That night, under the glow of the twin moons, a strange bond began to grow between the old man and the alien child. One had lost his world. The other had run from hers. And now, in the middle of a quiet garden, they had found each other. Not by blood, not by choice, but by something stronger. A fate. The nights on the alien world were long, filled with strange whispers of wind and rustling leaves that sounded like voices. But inside Aro's small home, there was only the quiet breath of sleep's own, and the girl's Nilu no longer slept. On the couch, she had made her place under the table. Where she felt safer, she would curl under the blanket, clutching her mango peel or old pillow like a shield. She didn't talk much, not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. Something inside her was locked, and Aro could feel it every time she tried to speak, like her words were trapped somewhere between fear and memory each day. She learned a little more of Aro's language, pointing at things, mimicking his words, or sometimes drawing strange shapes in the dirt with her fingers. But whenever he asked about her past, her family, where she came from, who was hunting her, she went silent. Once he placed a photo of a spaceship in front of her. She stared at it for a long time, then softly pushed it away and shook her head. Aro didn't push further, not yet. He noticed something else. Nilu had a strange connection with nature. When she walked into the garden, the birds didn't fly away. The wind seemed to follow her. One time, Aro found her standing with her palm on a mango tree. Her eyes closed, and the leaves above her moved slowly. Even though there was no breeze, he asked her what she was doing. She looked at him, touched her chest, and whispered, "Listen." He didn't hear anything, but maybe she did. That afternoon, Aro brought out his old datapad. He showed Nilu images of different species and creatures from the galaxy. She pointed to one, a tall, armored figure with cold eyes and sharp claws. Her hands shook as she said one word, pain. Then she pulled her knees up to her chest and didn't speak again for hours. Aro now understood, at least a little. Someone or something had hurt her deeply. Later that night, while Aro fixed the garden fence, Nilu sat by herself. Near the mango trees, suddenly, she screamed a sharp, terrified cry that made Aro drop his tools. He ran to her, heart racing. She was standing still, frozen eyes locked on a tree trunk where a small dark scar had formed. It wasn't a threat, just a mark, but to her, it meant something terrible. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered in her language. Aro placed a hand on her shoulder, and she collapsed into him, sobbing. He held her there for a long time. She didn't speak again that night, but she didn't run away either. She stayed close, clinging to the old man like a ship lost in stormy space. Aro tucked her in gently, brushing her hair from her forehead, and for the first time, she whispered two words in clear English, "Thank you." It was small, but it broke the silence of her pain. The next morning, Aro found her outside again, this time drawing shapes in the dirt. Circles, stars, and what looked like a broken cage. She pointed at the cage, then at herself. Then she drew a figure beside her, a tall one, with a beard and a mango in his hand. Aro smiled. "That's me." She nodded and drew a heart between the two figures. It wasn't just drawing, it was her way of speaking, and in her own quiet way, she was telling him she felt safe. But even as their bond grew, something dark hovered at the edge of the jungle each night. Aro noticed a strange beep in his house's sensors. Something was scanning the area. Quietly, carefully, he began checking his traps and updating his security grid. The hunters hadn't returned, but they hadn't stopped either, and Nilu's silence, her fear, her tears, they were warnings. She wasn't just hiding from a bad memory. She was hiding from something that still wanted her back. Aro stood on his porch that night, watching the trees sway under moonlight. Behind him, Nilu slept peacefully, finally breathing without fear. But Aro didn't rest. He knew the silence before a storm when he heard it. And the storm was coming. He just didn't know when. The jungle near Aro's home had always been calm. Birds sang softly, leaves whispered in the wind, and small creatures made quiet sounds in the dark. But lately, something had changed. The birds had gone quiet. The wind no longer sang. And even the small bugs stayed hidden. Aro noticed it, and so did Nilu. She stood near the garden gate one morning, staring into the trees as if listening to a silent voice. She walked to a tree at the far edge of the property and placed her hand on the bark. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Aro watched from a distance, his heart beating faster. Something about the way she stood there still, focused, felt ancient, like she was not just a child, but something more. When she returned, her face was pale, and she said in a whisper, "They are closer now." Aro didn't ask who they were. He already had an idea that night. He dusted off an old metal box from the attic. Inside was a set of mini shock mines, a motion scanner, and an old ID badge marked Commander Arovek's Earth Defense Unit. He hadn't used those tools in years. He had once fought in galactic wars, led troops, and saved colonies. Now, he was just a mango farmer, but maybe not for much longer. While Aro worked, Nilu stayed close. She didn't play. Didn't draw in the dirt. She watched the jungle like a soldier. Then something strange happened. Nilu walked into the woods, alone, without saying a word. Aro noticed too late, and his heart dropped. He grabbed his torch and followed, moving. Fast but silent, the jungle was darker than usual. Even the air felt heavier, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. He followed the faint prints in the dirt, tiny bare feet, soft but fast. Then he saw her, standing in a small clearing filled with glowing blue mushrooms. In front of her was something strange, a tree, split open like it had been torn by lightning. Inside the hollow trunk, Aro saw burned markings, symbols, and a small broken necklace. Nilu knelt in front of the trunk, picked up the necklace and held it tight. Tears fell down her cheeks, but she didn't cry out. Aro stepped forward. Slowly, not wanting to scare her, "Nilu," he said gently, "what is this place?" She didn't speak, but held the necklace up toward the tree and whispered something in her native tongue. Then she turned to Aro and said softly, "My home." It wasn't a house knot anymore. It was ruins, a tree shelter once used by her. Kind, now destroyed, burned by weapons, scarred by laser cuts. Aro's heart sank as he looked around. This was where her people had lived. Maybe where her family had died, and she had returned to it, even though it hurt. She pointed to the necklace and said, "Mama," then placed it around her neck. Aro knelt beside her and said nothing. There were no words big enough to fix a loss like that. But he was there, and she leaned into him. Just enough to say she was glad he came. Suddenly, the jungle made a sound, soft, but wrong. Not an animal sound, not natural. It was the metallic click of a hovering sensor drone. Aro grabbed Nilu and pulled her into the bushes. From the shadows, they saw a sleek black machine scanning the area. It floated above the ruined tree, paused near the necklace box, and beeped twice. Then it flew off, fast, disappearing into the trees. Nilu shook in Aro's arms. Not from cold, but from knowing. "They found me," she whispered. Aro nodded grimly. "Yes. And now they know you're not alone." They returned home just before nightfall. Aro activated all his traps, charged his old rifle, and locked every entrance. The quiet was over. The enemy was near, but this time they would find a warrior ant, a daughter worth protecting. As darkness fell, Nilu drew a picture by candlelight. It showed two figures standing under a mango tree, one tall, one small, facing a dark sky filled with ships. She handed it to Aro and said, "Us." He looked at the drawing, then at her glowing green eyes. "Yes," he whispered, "us." And deep in the woods, machines moved, scanning, waiting, hunting. But Aro had faced worse. And Nilu was no longer alone. The jungle held secrets, and soon it would become a battlefield. The jungle no longer felt alive. Even the air had changed. Growing heavy like a warning, the birds had vanished. The wind had gone silent. Only one thing remained, watching eyes hidden in the dark. Aro stood at the edge of his garden, staring into the trees. His fingers wrapped tight around the grip of his old plasma rifle. Nilu stood beside him, smaller than the weapon he held, but her eyes burned with something old. She wasn't just scared anymore. She was ready. The drone had returned during the night, leaving a black burn mark in the dirt. It had circled the mango trees, scanned the house, and vanished again. But Aro knew what it meant. It was the mark of tracker scouts that only came before the real monsters arrived. Nilu didn't speak much, but she had drawn pictures in the dust. 3 figures with sharp metal suits, long claws and red glowing eyes. She pointed at them and said one word: catchers. Aro remembered stories from the war slavers who hunted rare species to sell to secret labs. They didn't ask questions, they didn't show mercy. They just took. Aro reinforced the house with energy wire and set mini shock traps near the windows. He hadn't prepared for war in years, but old instincts never really died. Nilu helped where she could, even placing tripwires and digging small pits near the fence. She wasn't a normal child. She moved fast, silent, and with purpose. She had lived through worse than hiding. She had survived monsters that night. The jungle lit up with a low red glow. 3 ships hovered far beyond the tree line, silent. No sound, just deadly shadows in the mist. Aro watched through his old scope as dark figures dropped into the trees. Tall, armored, and moving like machines. "They're here," he said softly. Nilu didn't cry, didn't run. She only whispered, "Hide me." But Aro looked down at her and replied, "No, I'll stand with you." The first noise came at midnight. A loud snap as one of the traps was triggered. Then a scream, not human, and a body hitting the dirt. Aro took a breath, then fired once through the open window. A red beam cut through the jungle, and another scream echoed, to down, more to go. But the catchers weren't ordinary hunters. They adapted fast. Within minutes, they disabled the perimeter shield and began circling the house. Aro shut the power grid and lit smoke bombs to cover their movements. He told Nilu to crawl into the cellar, a hidden bunker lined with old steel and emergency rations. She hesitated. "You." He nodded. "I'll be right above you." Then he locked the trapdoor and turned toward the back door with the rifle raised. One of the hunters smashed through the window. Aro shot him point blank, but the armor only cracked. The creature roared, a metallic, inhuman sound. Aro threw a flash grenade and rolled across the floor as the beast swung a clawed arm. The explosion blinded the room, and Aro fired again, this time into its chest. The creature fell with a thud, sparks flying from its armor. But another entered from the front, and a third from the roof. Aro was surrounded, coughing from the smoke, bleeding from a slash on his shoulder. His legs were slower now, and his arms shook with each shot. He backed toward the kitchen till a soft voice called from beneath the floor, "Aro." The trapdoor exploded open, and Nilu rose, not alone. She held the old generator core from the bunker in her hands, and her body glowed faintly, the same color as the mango trees, green and gold. She stepped forward, eyes locked on the hunters. "Stop," she said, and for a second, they did. One hunter charged too fast for Aro to warn her, but Nilu raised the core and screamed. A shockwave burst from her body, a wave of raw energy that knocked the walls, shook the ground, and sent the hunters flying into the trees. They didn't move again. Aro dropped to his knees. Stunned, Nilu stood in the smoke, chest rising fast, hands shaking. Her glow faded slowly as she whispered, "I remember now." Aro crawled to her and pulled her into a hug. "You're safe now," he said. Though his voice was cracked and hoarse, she looked up at him and replied, "You kept your promise." Outside, the jungle was silent again. The ships in the sky blinked once, then vanished into the clouds. the hunters had failed, and in their place stood an old man and a small girl, both stronger than anyone imagined. But this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far bigger. Asterisk smoke still lingered in the air, dancing through broken windows and shattered door frames. The house, that once smelled of sweet mangoes and old tea, now smelled like burnt metal and fear. Auro stood in the center of the chaos, blood trailing down his arm. One knee pressing into cracked floorboards. Nilu sat beside him, breathing hard, her small body glowing faintly like an ember after fire. She had done something impossible. She had stopped the hunters with a power even she didn't fully understand. But the silence that followed was not peace. It was a warning, far above the jungle. The clouds parted once again. This time, a larger ship hovered, casting a dark shadow over the house. It was shaped like a knife, long, sharp, and deadly. And from its belly dropped a single black pod that hit the earth with a deep, hollow thud. Aro helped Nilu to her feet. "You need to hide," he said quickly. But she shook her head. No more hiding. He stared into her eyes and realized she remembered more than just the pain. She remembered who she was and what they were really after. The pod hissed and opened, releasing a figure unlike the others, taller, colder. Wrapped in armor that shimmered like moving oil, his face was covered by a silver mask, but his voice echoed across the yard. "Subject N7, he said, "return with me. Your power is not yours to keep." Nilu stepped forward, her fists clenched. "I am not a subject," she replied, voice trembling. The figure raised his hand, and a beam of red energy shot out. But before it could hit her, Aro dived in. Front, taking the blast in his shoulder, he dropped to the ground, groaning, his rifle sliding away. Nilu screamed not in fear, but in fury. The ground beneath her feet cracked as golden energy pulsed from her skin. She raised her hands, and the very air shimmered. The masked hunter stepped back, suddenly unsure. But then others dropped behind him too, 4, 6 armored soldiers, each holding heavy weapons. Aro coughed and tried to sit up. "Run, Nilu." He gasped, but she stood tall, her glow brighter now, her voice clear. "I won't run," she said. "Not when someone fought to give me a home." The soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, the jungle roared. It wasn't a sound from machines, but from life. The trees moved, roots twisting, vines snapping forward like whips. Birds flew in swarms. Animals emerged from the shadows, eyes glowing like hers. The forest had awakened. Aro watched in awe as nature itself responded to Nilu's call. She wasn't just connected to the jungle, she was part of it. Born from its soil, touched by its light, and now she was its protector. The battle that followed wasn't fought with bullets alone. Roots tangled the soldiers' feet. Trees bent their branches to knock weapons away. Nilu moved like a flame, dodging blasts and sending waves of energy that cracked armor. Aro, using one good arm, crawled to his old weapon and fired at weak points in their suits. Together, they fought not as soldier and child, but as a team. One by one, the enemy fell, their screams fading into the night, until only the masked figure remained. He raised a device, blinking red, and said, "You may win here, but others will come." She is marked before Nilu could reach him. He activated the pod and vanished into the sky with a thunderous boom. Silence fell again, but this time it was earned. The jungle stood still. The wind whispered through the trees again. Nilu dropped to her knees, exhausted, her glow fading gently. Aro reached her, pulled her close, and whispered, "You saved me." She looked at him and replied, "You saved me first." The sky slowly cleared, stars returning to the night. They had won the battle, but the war wasn't over. Somewhere out there, others would come. Others would hunt, but now Aro and Nilu were ready. They weren't just farmer and runaway. They were defenders of each other and of something even bigger: home. The sky was quiet again. No ships hovered above. No drones scanned the trees. No voices whispered threats. Only the wind returned gentle, warm, carrying the smell of ripe mangoes and clean earth. Arrow stood on the porch, his injured shoulder, wrapped in cloth, watching Nilu sleep beneath a big mango tree. For the first time since she came, she slept without flinching. Without fear, she had saved the jungle, saved him, and possibly saved herself. But she had lost something to her. Past her people, her home, Arrow knew that pain. He had once lost Earth. Left behind everything he loved in a war that tore galaxies apart. He had never expected to find something worth protecting again until a little mango thief entered his life. Over the next few days, the garden changed. Nilu planted new trees, whispered to them in her old language, and the trees seemed to lean toward her. She laughed more, drew pictures on the walls, and helped Arrow fix the broken windows. The air felt lighter, like the land itself had taken a deep breath, but she still asked one question again and again: will they come back? And every time, Arrow would look her in the eyes and say, "If they do, they'll find us waiting." Then, one morning, the local council arrived: 3 humans and 2 aliens in white robes. They had heard rumors of the fight, the explosion, the ship in the sky. They came not to punish, but to ask questions. At first, Arrow was ready to lie, to hide Nilu again. But she stepped forward and faced them herself. "I am not a weapon," she said softly. "I am a child. And this is my home now." The council looked at Arrow. "You know she's not just any girl." "I do," he replied. "She's my daughter." There was silence. Then one council member, gray-skinned alien with 4 eyes, nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "But if anyone comes for her again, send word. We will stand with you." After they left, Arrow sat beside Nilu under the mango tree. "You scared them," he said with a smile. She giggled and leaned against him. "You scared them more." They built a new section to the house, a small room with painted walls, soft pillows, and a wide window facing the garden. It was Nila's room, and she decorated it with glowing stones, dried leaves, and mango seeds. At night, she sat by the window, looking at stars and whispering names Arrow didn't know. Maybe the names of lost family, or maybe the names of stars she still dreamed of reaching. But she never asked to leave, because now she had something she never had before: belonging. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, Nilu asked, "What is a daughter?" Arrow smiled, wiped his hands on his work shirt, and sat beside her. "It's someone you protect, love, and never let go," he said. She thought about it, then nodded. "Then you are my father." The words were simple, but they echoed in Arrow's heart like thunder. He had never had children, never thought he could raise one. But this strange, glowing, mango-loving girl had become something more than just a guest. She was his family. As weeks passed, new life returned to the jungle. The mango trees grew stronger. New animals came out from hiding. Even the damaged garden began to heal itself. Visitors came, sometimes traders, travelers, curious council members, but none stayed long. They respected the old man and his daughter, and the legend that had begun to spread of the glowing girl who tamed the wild with her voice, and the war hero who chose peace by choosing love. One evening, Nilu gave Arrow a gift. It was a mango seed, polished, smooth, with a symbol carved into it: 2 small figures under one tree. She pressed it into his hand and said, "This will grow strong, like us." Arrow planted it in the center of the garden, right where she had first stolen a fruit. They watched it together as the first tiny sprout pushed through the soil, and both smiled, knowing it would never grow alone. Not anymore.